And welcome back to another episode of the Three Man Weave College Basketball Podcast. It's the season of joy, the 10th season of the Three Man Weave. We are back to talk basketball, actual real games. They have tipped off. It's Thursday. Games tipped off on Monday. 100-something games, craziness. Got a headache from looking at all the games, Jim, and all the scores on my phone. It was nuts. But we have a good podcast to talk about them all. No, just kidding. We're not talking about all of them, but we are going to give you our thoughts on what we saw in our three-man thoughts and our We Saw That section. We're going to get into Roots Roundup for a little news and notes, and we're going to preview some games for the weekend, some big games. But first, Jim, how are you?
I'm great, Kai. After Halloween, everybody starts putting up their holiday decorations. For some, that means Christmas. For me, that means basketballs on all my walls, on all my ceilings, logos, got more pennants like Matthew has behind him. It's not holiday season, it's hoop season, and we are extremely excited about that. It's good to actually discuss real basketball. And Matt with a new pennant displaying to the video viewers of this podcast, South Florida Bulls, Matthew. Very exciting.
Tribute to AAR, yes, Jim. Going to complete the collage here. I had kind of this awkward vacancy in my backdrop for those you two people watching us right now. So yeah, just a quick, shout out to him. We talked about that last week, and shouts to the excessively large slate on Monday. I hated it. Still don't know what happened in half those games, but we'll get to them. We'll learn something as we talk about these tilts today.
Yes, that is true. I actually have not debriefed every single game yet, so I'm going to learn some things like tomorrow that I didn't realize happened on Monday. That's exciting. But first, 3MW_CBB. That's where you can find us on Twitter and Instagram if you're interested. You can subscribe to our podcast, I hope you do, on iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're live right now, usually 7 a.m. Central Time on Thursdays will be the standard podcast live showing time. Check us out. If you want to see our faces, you can always watch the replay. They're up there forever. But the subscriptions and the likes help. So hit the like button, subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. And finally, please do join our Discord with Trilly Donovan. It's popping off right now. We have fantastic community of college basketball minds. We're talking daily betting in there. We're talking general games, reactions, everything you can think of. We have a bunch of saved interviews from coaches and other college basketball insiders that are great to look back to and listen to and read. We have the scout team with Kevin Sweeney and Eric Fawcett breaking down actual film. It's a fantastic community. We really encourage you to join. There is a link at the bottom of our description that you can get, number one, all of our previews for all 364 teams in the country, and also access to that Discord, to that community.
Quick interjection on that, Kai. I have learned multiple injuries, absences, guys that are going to leave the team. Like we knew Tyrell Ward was going to leave LSU and redshirt before anybody really publicly did. There is a lot of great information in there. A lot of people that are maybe connected to one or two schools, they spread the information. It's not always in the same channel in Discord. You poke around a little bit, you find stuff, but man, it's an invaluable resource in addition to just being a fun place to hang out.
And I'll add a couple of folks I know had trouble accessing the Discord, the previews through the Discord channel. Just DM us or email us. We'll try to get back to you. Apologies. I know it's a challenge to get in, but once you get over the wall, Kai, it's just a playground of fun, an oasis of hoops. So please just drag through that sludge for us. We'll get you there and get in and stay a while. Water's warm.
Indeed. And hey, let's stay a while on the podcast. Let's get into Roots Roundup news and notes. Here we go.
Let's do it, Kai. Roots Roundup, news and notes. Both, definitely both. First, Maddie, a quick shout out to CBB Analytics, one of our incredibly valuable resources during preview season, but also as we get into the actual season, something we use quite a bit, shot charts, on-off data, etc.
Yes, Jim, CBB Analytics, the holy grail of college basketball data, the 30,000-foot view. Shouts to Nick and all that he's doing over there. Again, we've been using these pretty extensively throughout our preview series and throughout the year. I've already been looking at some of the new coaches and their shot charts. For example, looking at Cal Poly and what Mike DeGeorge is doing out there, you get some early inklings as to, oh yeah, these guys are sort of the type of offense I thought or type of defense I thought. Great for scouting, obviously, coaches or fans looking to understand more about their opponent. I was seeing on forums a bunch of schedule breakdown and people looking at their opponents for the upcoming non-con season. CB Analytics is a great way to get a blueprint for that if you're interested in getting coaches and fans alike. Sign up today. That's cbbanalytics.com. But when you do, use the promo code WEAVE, WEAVE, that gets you $40 off a subscription. And coaches, please DM us about the All Access Pro tier. We'll get you set up with that as well. That's cbbanalytics.com, Kai.
Already paid for itself with a Cal Poly cover and over in the opener against San Francisco. So thank you for that, CBB Analytics. I credit you entirely for that. Okay. Key headlines. Grand Canyon is no longer headed to the West Coast Conference. They are headed to the Mountain West. This is kind of a big shrug for me, Kai. I would rather talk basketball, and this is almost a distinction without a difference, but whatever. Good for Grand Canyon.
Moving on up. That's all I got. Yep. Talk ball.
How long till they're in the Pac-12? That's the question.
Not
the
very
ultimate
long.
question.
Not very long.
Yes. Generally would agree with you there. Recruiting news. We did have some big names make decisions over the past week, namely 5-star shooting guard Darren Peterson headed to Kansas, and 5-star small forward Shelton Henderson headed to Duke. The blue blood rich get richer in the 5-star department. Speaking of rich, that would be BYU. Rumors that they have the deepest NIL pockets in the entire country. They nabbed a top 25 recruit, Xavier Staten, headed to BYU. Oh, and another blue blood, Kentucky, getting a top 30 recruit, a Caden Lewis, combo guard. Mark Pope's really reeling in quite a class to kick off his recruiting in the Bluegrass. I'm sure Lexington fans are really excited about that. Penn State, another unconventional name in the recruiting world. Top 50 recruit Caden Mingo, point guard, headed to Penn State, the successor for Ace Baldwin. Big time for Mike Rhodes there. Texas, grab 4-star power forward John Clark. UNC, yet another blue blood in this section, getting a top 50 combo guard in Isaiah Dennis. And Tennessee, Amari Evans, top 80 shooting guard to the Vols. Guys, I don't even want to get your thoughts on it. It's just recruiting. We've got games to discuss. We're flying through Roots Roundup because goodness, we've saw that. We have got 3-man thoughts. Last little things I will get your thoughts on. We do have guys entering the portal right now. Tyreek Smith left Memphis, officially entering the portal, and Jalen Worley left Virginia, one of the guys in the fallout of the Tony Bennett retirement, maybe less surprising there. I know Tyrell Ward has not entered yet for LSU, but Matt McMahon did say he does not expect him back this season. So the writing is all over the wall there. Matthew, of those 3 teams, Memphis, Virginia, LSU, who are you most worried about with a player entering the portal already?
Virginia.
Yes, I was hoping that'd be your answer.
Timely question, Jim, because we sort of saw the trials and tribulations in their opening debut against our Campbell Camels fight on roll humps. Yeah, definitely Virginia, Jim.
59 possession game, Kai. So much for Virginia's gonna speed it up. More threes, more space. We're seeing it in practice. Man, that some of those rumors are always just a little bit.
I bet the over, Jim. 130 looked low.
Did you?
So I don't. Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty efficient, but when you play a 40 possession game, it's just tough to ever get over any sort of number. So
yeah,
Yep.
not enough shots.
Under and dog here. That's a handicap.
Kai put his glasses on for those listening. Kai's real proud of himself. Hey, Kai, real quick with Memphis. They beat our Tigers, our Mizzou Tigers. Same game as last year. Mizzou looks awesome in the first half.
Yeah.
Collapses in the second half. Good for Memphis. Penny Hardaway outfoxing our super clever coach Dennis Gates.
I could really get into Mizzou, the dysfunctionalities, but
let's get into it.
I'll save
Let's get into it.
Well, the rotation is still a mess. He doesn't know who he wants to play. The shooting is horrible, worse than it's ever been. The defense is terrible. There's no effort. There's no adjustments. It's really quite the mess. I'm overreacting a little bit, but it was bad, Jim, in the second half.
They cannot score unless they're in transition, and they have to get steals to get in transition. So they gamble a bunch on defense, and then they end up giving up layups. In half court, it's a complete slog. Yeah, credit to Memphis. The pressure completely destroyed Mizzou in the second half. But man, that is a theme from last year. A theme also, as Kai mentioned, the rotations. We're a little worried about Mizzou. A little worried. We don't play another Kai. No more games away from Mizzou Arena until like Christmas, basically, until the arch rivalry in St. Louis. So perhaps they can recover. But man, it's looking bleak early there with that collapse in the second half. That's really it. No other random news and notes here for me in the Roots Roundup section, guys. So Kai, and kick it right back to you for we've saw that start going through what we have seen over the first 3 days of the season.
We saw that. Yeah, let's talk some big games that we saw. Well, I want to start with Gonzaga. Now, this was past my bedtime, fellas, so I did not get to watch and stay up till midnight or who knows what time, but I woke up to quite the shock when I saw that Gonzaga beat Baylor by, gosh, almost 40 points. Jim, did you watch this game?
I did, and it was a murder scene. I thought spooky season was over. I thought I was done with Halloween trivia and horror movies, but man, Kai, this was your Simpsons gif of stop, he's already dead.
Yes.
The second half. I think Baylor cut it to 12 or 11 at one point with a steal. Edgecombe got a layup, and Gonzaga took that personally. They just completely rolled from then on, seemingly scored every single possession, racked up almost 1.5 points per possession against Baylor's defense, Matt, which again is a real panic button level bad. They switch everything and they don't play with any physicality and they cannot guard ball screens. It was not a true redemption for the 2021 national title game, but I know some Gonzaga fans felt that in their hearts a little bit. Matt, more excited about Gonzaga, more worried about Baylor. Where did you land with this one?
Well, first and foremost, most worried about Mark Few's son, who was murdered at the end of the game on an absolute bogus.
Baptized. Absolutely
It's
baptized.
so tough.
That's so funny.
Poor guy just getting back in transition D, trying to get a body in front, and then that happened. So yeah, that was a moot point. That was a footnote. Gonzaga's great. Baylor, I feel comfy with my preseason ranking, Jim. I don't think they're a very, very good team. They're not an elite team this year. Too many holes in that roster. Playing with fire with that defense, and the depth isn't all that great either.
Yeah, I didn't like that Gonzaga's defense looked kind of good. Like that's more about Baylor's offense not being as fiery as I thought it would be. Gonzaga losing Watson, the defense should not look better. I mean, you swap in Ajayi for Watson, you bring in Caleb Battle, but they just looked more dynamic. Maybe Stromer and Huff having a little physical development also helped there. But Kai, yeah,
John Jacobs.
I was real worried about Baylor.
John Jacobs, assistant
Yeah,
drain.
John Jacobs leaving. It's assistant drain, brain drain, as Matthew calls it. Yes.
Yeah, but he was an offensive guy. Like their
No,
defense.
but I'm saying
That's what I'm saying.
Baylor's
Oh,
offense
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
look
right,
that good
Yeah.
against Gonzaga's. Remember, Gonzaga's defense got lit up by USC in the exhibition.
Yeah, I don't know. Yes, moving on. Ohio State beat Texas. Now, I wasn't too surprised by this result. Ohio State could be very good this season, and we just don't trust old Rodney Terry over there at Texas, do we, Matthew? I thought it was funny. I watched a little bit of the game. Arthur Kaluma was doing Arthur Kaluma things. I mean, he's too much of a focal point in this offense. That's just very, very clear to me. He plays too much. Jason Kent getting 16 minutes to his 30 is funny to me. And that's what I was afraid that was going to happen this season. Trey Johnson looks awesome. Texas's freshman. That guy is a stud. But Ohio State, kudos to them. That backcourt is going to be pretty darn good with Johnson, Thornton, and even Micah Parrish. Funny, though, the big guys, they're kind of been the story this offseason. Bradshaw and Stewart, Matthew, didn't really do much.
Hold on.
Matthew.
Sorry. My audio just switched. I'm deferring to Jim. Hockey pass here.
Okay, yeah. No Trayvon Mark hurt, but Kai, I'm with you. A little too much Kaluma relative to Kent. This is an odd. I'm saying this in air quotes. The way the game played out thing, because Ohio State had, I think, two 2-point field goals in the first half. They were just completely on fire from downtown. Then the second half, Texas was kind of panicking, scrambling out to recover to shooters, and that opened up the interior a little bit. The adjustments weren't all that great from the Longhorns, but man, it was nice to see Ohio State with Aaron Bradshaw out there. He looked solid, not like a big time scoring outing, but he was a nice presence in the middle. Johnny Mobley, the freshman for Ohio State, did not miss a three. That really helped. They got a couple big buckets from Devin Royal off the bench. Matt Sean Stewart didn't really give him anything. Your big dookie
weird.
there, but with the backcourt was always probably going to be the strength of this team with Michi, with Bruce Thornton, who was really, really good in this one. I didn't come away from this one thinking all that differently about either team, if I'm being honest.
I think I watched a little bit of this again. I was pretty in the head in the sand. I came away being more impressed with Ohio State, obviously, just like their offense, I think does have that gear. I mean, but Trey Johnson, Texas, general teaser from one of my thoughts, like freaky freshman, some really good freshman performances. Like I think sort of, what are you shaking your head at?
I'm shaking my head at because you clearly didn't look at my thoughts in the outline.
I haven't
first
yet. I
thought
assume
is
we're talking
freshman.
freshman. Yeah, a lot of good freshmen. Trey Johnson was awesome, Jim.
This is hey
That's
folks.
my appetizer.
When
Trey
you when
Johnson.
you got a podcast, you share your outline with each other so that you all know what you're going to talk about, and then you have a good plan for you don't overlap. But we'll scramble. We'll make it work on the fly here.
Oh yeah, I see you did a freshman
In
there.
Matt's defense, this is only our 376th episode, so he needs a couple
We're
more
still
reps.
kind of figuring it out here.
Let's move on. Yes, real quick, Texas A&M lost to UCF. Now, this is noteworthy because UCF's second best player, I'll say Jalen Sellers, was out. And A&M was, this line moved 4 points towards A&M. Every indication was UCF's going to be kind of a dumpster this year because of a weird roster fit. But gosh, who are you more worried about, I suppose, Matt? Or is it more about UCF, I will say, or is it more about A&M just crap in the bed?
A&M. Yeah,
Same
A&M.
old A&M.
Same old
Yeah.
A&M.
I love that team, and I was like, oh, I should probably bet them to start the year against a crappy UCF team. But I don't. Offensively, there's no consistency. They can't go on large runs because they just don't shoot and convert at a high level. I just feel like it's they're too at the mercy of the randomness of all their effort stuff with rebounding and like getting loose balls. And it's just, I need a little bit of skill. And the answer is not Hayden Hefner, Buzz. That's not the answer to the solution.
Yeah, he can't be playing the same amount of minutes as Obaseki. Obaseki was 15 minutes off the bench. Matt, that was, I know, one of the reasons you were higher on them exceeding last year's potential, and he was 1 for 3 from the field in 15 minutes, a complete non-factor. Wade Taylor was chucking from everywhere, took 11 threes, really didn't need to be. Get to the rim, my man. One of his biggest strengths is getting to the free throw line. He only took 2 free throws. He only took 4 twos. Kai, this was just like, Texas A&M is exactly who they are every single year. They're probably going to finish like between 30th and 35th again in KenPom. I guess I was impressed with UCF, and more specifically, they were just bombing away from 3. Like, it was a kind of a stylistic shift for Dawkins relative to the personnel he's got. He's really going to lean into that, I guess. But this was just like, yes, A&M is Texas A&M once again.
It's very funny. Look across the country, and you see a lot of teams are who they are always, who they have always been. I think, like North Texas, for instance, is still a wagon. Utah State, doesn't matter his coaching, they're still a wagon. You're going to see that little consistency. It's funny, despite all the transfer portal stuff. Makes you think. Couple performances we got to call out here. Kalkbrenner, Ryan Kalkbrenner. Ever heard of him? The center for Creighton. He had 49 and 11 last night. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I mean, player of the year candidate, absolutely. Now, he played UT Rio Grande Valley, who has like negative rim protection, I'm pretty sure, Jim. But 49 points, that's a good start.
Yeah, they play like a 6'8" small forward sometimes at center. They were playing pick and pop 5 type stuff, and that's why UT Rio Grande Valley scored like crazy, because against drop coverage, pick and pop is a complete killer. Kalkbrenner said that in the post-game interview. He's like, yeah, they play a little differently with that pick and pop, and we're not really well equipped for that. But he was 20 for 22 from the field. They just gave him the ball, he dunked. They gave him the ball, he dunked. He also hit a couple threes, had 10 rebounds. He had like 2 blocks. He was completely dominant. We're going to talk a little bit of Creighton in one of my thoughts, Matt, so we don't need to go all the way in depth on the team. But man, Kalkbrenner's incredible. And I was kind of before the year like, I don't know if he scores enough to win National Player of the Year. And he has 49 points. I'm like, okay, maybe he does score enough. I think he's going to be in that mix.
Hey, shouts to our Vaqueros with an admirable effort. New coach Khalil Fennell, a chip off the old BYU brain block. Amazing what coaching upgrade does for your program. And I think it was actually smart of them to be like, all right, Kalk, just score 50 and we'll try and beat you with the math on the other end. Like, we don't really have any other chance. It was probably a pretty good play. Obviously not a winning recipe, but you're not going to go into Creighton and win at Creighton unless you do something gimmicky. So, Vaqueros.
Yes. Shout out to Davion Bailey for your Incarnate Word. 41 points in a loss to Cal Baptist. I'll tell you what, I've been high on Incarnate Word before, and they've burned me. This year, it's coming to fruition, baby. The Incarnate Word Cardinals can play basketball this season.
This is the year. They apparently found some NIL money. They got 2 guys from Ball State. They apparently paid a freshman 6 figures, which is just unbelievable for a Southland program. But Kai, I was high on Cal Baptist too, so I didn't touch this game, but it was close the whole way. And as Matt was saying, for the Vaqueros, an admirable effort on the road for UIW.
Indeed. And of course, we always have to highlight the bad loss section. Gosh, we already have a couple. South Carolina lost at home to North Florida. Now, I previewed the A-Sun. Now, North Florida does some weird things because they shoot a lot of threes, but this team is not as good as last year. This team's a bit down from last season. This is a horrible loss for Lamont Paris. Oh no, Matthew, are the Cocks going back in the gutter?
I think so. Not gutter, but you're way too happy for the Gamecocks failures. I just know that was such a pressure point for you last year, and
Because
now
they're
you
very
have
overrated.
vindication. Yeah, they were. I thought they were. I don't know. You could argue maybe even underrated in the metrics when good
No,
at
I'd
winning
say
close
properly
games.
rated in the metrics.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair.
Or
They
overrated.
were 23-24 South Carolina, was 22-23 Mizzou.
Yeah.
Outside the top 50, wear a home jersey in the opening round, lose. And then this year, it looks bleak. Mizzou was really bad last year to follow up. Everybody knows that. I fear that South Carolina has that going forward. Kai, the thing that stands out from this game is North Florida out-rebounded South Carolina
That's
in
bad.
that stupid, wonky zone.
Yep.
It's not stupid. It's just unconventional. But 43-37 on the glass, that cannot happen if
Yeah.
you're South Carolina. That tells me you're lacking physicality, effort, and man, they don't have a ton of shot creation either. When your point guard is stolen from the MEAC, who was supposed to go to an A10 school and be a backup, that's a problem. That is an issue.
Look, we've made fun of Matt before about Michi Johnson, but the guy could play. He's a good player.
Good player.
Good player.
Now he's back home.
Yes, he is back home. Yeah, Ohio State. Villanova last night. They lost by 10 to Columbia at home. The Columbia Lions, hey, they're an upstart team. Sexy pick to compete in the Ivy, but you still can't lose them at home if you're Villanova. Everyone's concerns about Kyle Neptune have already been pretty much validated. It seems like this is his last season at Villanova. I know we've played one game, but yikes.
Hey, they played two, and the first one was not a really overly impressive.
It wasn't good either. Yeah, it's
Lafayette.
bad.
Yeah,
Lafayette. That's
so
right. Sorry.
It's
no Dixon.
It's not
though.
great.
Doesn't matter.
I watched almost all this game last night. Eric Dixon was incredible, Matt, and they still lost by double digits. He had 33. The problem is Columbia shot 70% inside the arc. If you're not going to play defense, Villanova, what do you have? Last year, the thing they clung to is they're a top 20 defense and were really hard to score on. This was kind of a layup line. They got a couple uncontested shots early, and then Villanova started overextending, overhelping. The Columbia also shot 26 free throws. Villanova is in a world of hurt. It's not pretty right there. No matter how great Dixon is, Kai, if they're not defending, they've got other guys kind of taking bad shots at times. It's sloppy. It's clearly not well coached. This has complete implosion capabilities this year where they can fall outside the top 100, fire the coach mid-season. It could get gross.
Not good when Loyola Maryland puts up a better fight against Columbia than Villanova. Such ends. We've saw that. We continue on to three-man thoughts.
But before we do,
we have an ad. It's Home Field.
Shout out to Home Field.
They're back. Yes, of course, our beloved Home Field's back. We would never go away from them as a sponsor. If you don't know what Home Field is, your head's in the sand because they make the best collegiate premium apparel in the world. They have tons of schools, colleges, with names on shirts, with pictures on shirts. They go back into the archives of your specific school and pull out meaningful designs that really speak to you. From a Mizzou fan, personally, I have like all their shirts. I love every single one of them. They're all fantastic. They're super comfy. They're stylish. They've added hats on the website now. They've added some cool coaching jackets, some other type of jackets that I don't even know what they're called, but they're awesome. They got some joggers up there. Home Field is expanding like crazy. They're probably making hand over fist, hence they can pay us for this ad. Ha ha ha. But really, if you haven't heard of them, go check them out. They have like 100 plus schools now. It really is amazing. You can get 15% off your first purchase from Home Field by using our code 3MW, homefieldapparel.com. Go shoot them a follow on Twitter as well, homefieldapparel on Twitter. And again, that's homefieldapparel.com, promo code 3MW. Home Field, wear one for the team.
All right. Three-man thoughts, Kai. You're still our host.
I'm going to let Matt start.
Should we combine our thought here, Matthew? Our
let's do it.
thought?
Yeah. Actually, well, Jim, my other thought was kind of close to yours too. Let's do let's start with, I called it kind of, I was trying to find programs that needed to come out with a statement on day one, right? Like whether it's first year or it's third pivotal dicey year. And then they kind of came out and it got a little bit dicey, but they ultimately, they snuck through. And I think DePaul was the one program that stuck out to me. There's a couple, but the Chris Holtman hype there, to go to OT with Southern Indiana, who may be a decent basketball team. Still, it kind of gave me vibes of last year where Purdue Fort Wayne came in and DePaul looks like a mid-major team. I think I may have overhyped that. Like it's almost like all their players are mid-major players.
They are.
Still, that was concerning. I mean, honestly, the Big East had Butler and Xavier with a little bit of a sort of a rocky opener. Xavier made no sense to me. I thought they would come in and just steamroll Texas Southern, and then Butler against Missouri State. Kai, your Bears, I guess our Bears, looked kind of plucky under Kwanzaa Martin, trying to go into Hinkle and get a steal win. But for Butler especially, like I think that's everyone's sort of waiting for them to maybe make a step this year. That was almost a disastrous day one loss for Thad, who like desperately needs some mojo this season. If you guys watched that game, it was not pretty.
Well, Missouri State. Hey, I'm just glad I dumped them too. Like at the preseason, Missouri State, they grabbed 16 offensive rebounds, 40% of their offensive rebounds. That's what Konzo's team has to do to compete. I think they're going to be kind of a tough double-digit dog. But yeah, the Big East, man. Besides, even Creighton struggled with UT Rio Grande Valley. We know Kalkbrenner had 49, but gosh, they didn't cover by any means. Interesting start for them. I agree. DePaul is going to be interesting to look under a magnifying glass, Jim, going forward. Big East as a whole.
Yeah, I was kind of buying that DePaul would look a little better this year, and it was just more of the same in that game one. Not impressive, and as Matt said, just it's a collection of mid-major guys, and apparently the sum is not the whole is not greater than the sum of the parts yet for DePaul. Holton's impact has not quite taken hold there. Matt, if you're going to call out Butler, sorry, but you got to stir up the hornet's nest that is Providence too. Barely escaping Central Connecticut State at home. Yeah. That was not pretty. The offense looked abysmal. And I know Bryce Hopkins didn't play. I get it. You can't be one Bryce Hopkins away from almost losing at home to maybe the second best team in the NEC. I don't know. It was not pretty there. Did not crack 60 points. Yuck. Speaking of not cracking 60 points, Seton Hall.
Yep.
That team also real bad, struggling on offense. Holloway almost losing to his former school in a complete grinder. I mean, as you go through it, Big East did not look good. Like Marquette,
DePaul, Seton Hall,
awesome.
Georgetown, Butler, Providence, Nova, LOL, Xavier you mentioned. Only Marquette, St. John's, and UConn came out and did their business. I mean, Creighton was comfortably in that lead, but still they were kind of nip and tuck lead with Culk going off. So Big East freak out. Your conference sucks. That's what I'm
just going to say also too, a little like UConn covered, but it was not like they were 15 with 12 minutes left. It was not this like emphatic normal Huskies get up by 40 win and hang on or lead by 40 the entire way. So just keeping an eye on that. Obviously it was not a bad performance, not even remotely so, but the two most impressive teams from opening week in the Big East are Marquette and St. John's to me.
Clearly. Yep. And two more, Jim. Sorry, I'll hand it off to you seamlessly here. St. Joe's and Syracuse. St. Joe's against Ed DeChellis.
Should have been. We saw that actually. Yeah. Good point.
Yep.
Well, they hung on.
Syracuse,
they hung on.
We're
going to give them credit.
They did hang on. And then Syracuse, I thought was a little bit, against Lemoyne.
Lemoyne was missing its two best players.
And Lemoyne was the walking wounded. So Red Altry and our boy Dan Engelstad need to get the ship tightened up there.
Yeah, Matt, agreed. That and those, those are a little further down the national rankings. But one of my thoughts is semi-worrisome question mark is the title of it. Just teams that were not convincing in their opening game. We've talked about Creighton already, barely getting past UT Rio Grande Valley, despite that Herculean Kalkbrenner effort. If you need Pop Isaacs that badly, you might be in a little bit of trouble. That's really my concern with them. I know Pop didn't play, but he's not going to save your defense. That's for sure. So we'll see how they look against a team that doesn't pick and pop. Xavier, offense not that crisp, but Texas Southern is commonly a thorn in power conference team sides in those bye games. The other three I want to mention, Kai, and you can kind of go in whatever direction you want. UNC not looking that good against Elon, like extending to double digits finally in the final minute. Mm-hmm. Elon, seriously? Then Purdue shot the lights out, but still couldn't get away from Texas A&M Corpus Christi. And a sneaky under the radar grossest performance, Wake Forest. You're supposed to blow out bad teams. That was why that was your calling card last year. Coppin State cannot score. Wake Forest couldn't either. 15-point win against arguably the worst offense in the entire country.
Yeah.
I eyebrow raise concern at the Demon Deacons.
It's a good shout because High Point promptly beat Coppin by 42 last night or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a little bit. I watched a little bit, Jim, of the weight game because I'm obviously kind of a weight guy this year. I'm trying to make sure my investment looks sound. And Coppin was playing a lot of weird zone. And I'm going to give Wake a pass for that. That you get 3 strikes and you're out. That was 1 strike for me.
Okay. Why can High Point demolish whatever Coppin's doing
I think
defensively
High
in a
Point
Wake
made
Forest
threes
game?
and Wake did not make threes. Still, I think Forbes is very frustrated after games like, we should go inside against Coppin State. What are we doing? And I think he's right to say that. So
We'll see how they look against NCAA.
I will defend
yeah.
I will biasly defend Purdue a little bit. I don't know why, but just for, I don't know, fun. Corpus Christi is good this year. I'm going to put that out there. They are very good, in my opinion. It was the old bugaboos, though, for Purdue. I think that's concerning. It's the guard turnovers. Like Braden Smith, he had a great game overall, but 6 turnovers. He didn't really shoot the ball. It was almost like he was trying to get assists, which he had 15 of them. I was kind of impressed by Daniel Jacobson. I mean, he's going to be their starting center. He looks good already. He's big, sticky, pretty big man in the middle there. And they really extended at the end of the game. They kind of were like, okay, enough of this. Once Corpus Christi got close, they won the last 5 minutes by almost 20 points. So a little bit of a half strike one for Purdue for me.
My eyebrow up is Camden Heide being a 0. He was kind of a nobody in their exhibition against Creighton. Like,
they like that freshman,
he's just
Harris.
Not emerging. Yeah. Jakari Harris emerging way ahead of him. Even CJ Cox playing like a little bit more than him too. So maybe he's just not ready. We'll see. Colvin was scorching hot, but other than that, he was bad in the exhibition. I don't know. We'll see. I'm waiting to see on Purdue. I actually considered knocking them a half point for that effort.
Wow. Okay. Fair.
All right, Kai, your first thought.
Okay, my first thought, guys. Relatively quick thoughts for Kai today. Vermont, the snip snap. Whiplash, whatever you want to call it. The Vermont Catamounts, the dominant force in the America East, they beat UAB on the road on Monday. Incredibly impressive win, something like 7-point dogs. UAB, a very good team this season. And they turned around and lost by 51 to Auburn last night.
And it wasn't that close.
And it wasn't even that close. In the first half, maybe the first 10 minutes, okay. But the second half, Auburn started at 32-4. It was crazy. How do you evaluate a team like that? How do you evaluate these performances? My take, certainly an off night for Vermont. That's not what their true game is. I think their truer game is the UAB game. I would probably say that's a little bit higher than their true ceiling, the UAB game. That was a Herculean effort. But the Auburn game, I think they play that game again. Vermont loses by maybe 20. Secondly, Auburn is whoa good. This team is a national title contender. We said as much in the preseason. I'm going to give us credit, especially Jim. He's picked them as their national title winner.
Tigers.
They are up to number 2 in KenPom. We have a little preview with Houston coming up this weekend. But it certainly makes for a fun betting perspective, Matt. In KenPom, Vermont starts at 96, goes to 79 with the UAB win, falls back to 103 with the Auburn loss. You gotta find the middle somehow from a betting perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't find the jungle that Auburn resides in and don't touch any team that goes in there. Even good teams, they've done that many a time. I remember, I think Furman's been a victim of that. There's been some good mid-majors who have gone in there and gotten boat race. So it's just, I think a lot of these, as we talk, Becker talked about preseason. It's we trying to kind of fix our offense this year. And I think they really do use a lot of these games as sort of a petri dish. And when you're outclassed and outmanned and outgunned and it gets to 10, 15, it can get to 30 in a hurry as it snowballs.
Yeah, they shot sub 40% from 2 against UAB, still won. Okay, not bad. Then they shot sub 30% from 2 against Auburn's ridiculous interior defense. You just can't score against them inside unless you've got true power conference size. I think Auburn's going to do that to a lot of teams. I think back to that exhibition where they beat FAU by 50, maybe it was 35, but Auburn is going to speed bag these teams at home if they cannot compete with them athletically. So I'm not gonna shame Vermont too much for that, Kai. I think they're still a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, preseason player of the year, I think, in the America East, Shamir Bogues, 0 points. Auburn is is that good. Okay, back around the horn to Matthew. What do you
got? Opening debut for coaches, kind of over intersecting with my last theme. And I'll put a positive spin on it. First year coaches, new destinations, guys we hadn't heard about, some guys we had. I thought impressive. Again, it's one game, so take it with a big fat salt shaker. We need to talk about Chris Mack, Phil 68, former quasi colleague of ours. Very big win to kind of start his tenure without one of his best players. I argue maybe his best guard. Huge win. I think Charleston's still the class of that conference. I felt better about that after one game. I just think they have their talent's better, and they still have a good coach. Their coach is good.
I like that they played Berzovic a ton and fed him a ton. I was like, oh yeah, this guy's incredible. He doesn't need to be a 21-minute a game guy. Here's 35 minutes, destroy people.
Matthew,
I could tell that was an easy sell for Mac to keep him. Like, hey, your old coach just didn't play very much. You can be the absolute epicenter of everything here. And I think that was.
Did you see the post-game interview about that?
What did he say?
I think Goodman asked him like, "Oh, are you tired from playing that many minutes?" He's like, "Oh no, that's what Coach Mack said he was going to do. He's going to play me a ton, and I'm ready for that." I was like, "Yep, perfect."
Matt, are you concerned the shot quality scored it as like a double-digit SIU win?
No, I bet on SIU. So every bet I place always errs on the side of shot quality, but I don't think the sportsbook grade the shot quality results. They grade the actual results, unfortunately. So, Hey, how about in our own backyard, Chicago State? Still kind of a fun, plucky little ball club. Scott Spinelli and his son, I believe.
Gabe,
correct?
I think
Gabe's getting
two
buckets.
of his kids on the team, but one of them's a walk-on. Yeah.
Nepotism does work at times, folks. And yeah, they were kind of flirting with Loyola, who I thought, again, I'm just really high on Loyola, so that's probably why I was most surprised by it. But that was impressive. I think that's a real program now. I'm glad they're actually in a conference, and we'll see how they elevate. Eastern Washington.
Miles Rubin's going to be in foul trouble forever for Loyola.
I worry he's not gotten any better. I worry he's just a one-trick shot blocking pony, and it's just sort of a liability in other areas. Yep. Eastern Washington, Dan Monson, just continuing his little mojo from the end of last year when he does the whole Long Beach lame duck surge, walks into I would say like a skeleton roster that he basically cobbled together. Led Colorado by 15 at the first half. They ended up crumbling and losing the second half, but then they got a big win last night against a really good Seattle team at home on a tough travel turnaround. That's a big time program, the Big Sky, and I was sort of skeptical that would be a good hire and that they would, get talent. But Monson's like a year ahead of schedule. That team looked like a real team. I was very impressed.
It's a good example of programs stay the same, man. Eastern Washington, they're pretty much the exact same as they have been.
Monson's from that kind of Eastern Washington area, so maybe he feels reinvigorated by that quasi homecoming.
How we get older, these programs stay the same.
They stay the same. Nice. Creep Central from the squad here. How about James Madison and Preston Spradlin? I lost some money betting against the debut of Preston, but JMU transfer galore, but talented and shockingly well organized for a team with that many new faces playing day one against an Ohio team that has effectively 3.5, 4 starters back and a really good older Jeff Bowles coach team. That was like, James Madison is still James Madison, back to the same point made about Eastern Washington and Monson.
That was my preseason Sun Belt pick, Matthew. I think Spradlin figured it out in like year 4 at Morehead State, and he's just been awesome ever since.
Troy looked awesome though too. I feel pretty good about that one. But yeah, that's gonna be a fun league. Sun Belt's fun this year. And then last one, I'll throw just a deep cut. I watched some of the IU Indy game, Jim. I think you did too. Paul Crucero, like the Jags look like a bad team, but not a terrible team. And I think that's important. I think that's some growth that we should call out.
Them and Cal Poly they're 3 time zones apart, but they're the same thing. They're a coach coming up from a good D2 school who brought 4 players with him and taking over a complete debacle disaster of a D1 program. And they're just inherently going to raise the floor of both those schools. And obviously IU Indy didn't play a D1 opponent. They were playing, I don't even remember. Not Spalding. They played Spalding last year, but
who was it? Drake was my final mention there, Jim. They also played a non-D1 opponent, and
they played IU Columbus.
IU Columbus. Okay.
Genuinely, I think we could have they out rebounded IU Columbus 64-27. IU Columbus had no athleticism, no size. It was a complete mismatch. But yes, there was organization, there was structure, there was like cohesion on IU Indy that we haven't seen in a while. Same with Poly. Both those schools looked so much different, so much better in their debuts.
And then curious to see what Drake looks like. They host SFA on Sunday, this upcoming Sunday. Kind of a really fun mid-major matchup there. Again, D2 coach, some continuity there. And I did not see it, but they dominated their first game against the nobodies. We'll see.
York.
That's all I have. Just some fun coaches. John Jacobs was my other other one, but I feel like that was
Smash.
just I don't want to talk about Indiana State. That was more of an Indiana State is like really, really, really rough. And I hope FIU's as good as they looked. I think Indiana State had a lot to do with how good they looked, unfortunately.
Yeah. Sycamores flew, I don't want to say too close to the sun because it sounds like it's their fault, but they got really close to the sun with shirts, and now the wings fell off and they're plummeting back to earth, unfortunately. Icarus, Kai. Icarus.
Icarus, the Indiana State Sika Icarus. There's something there. All right, Jim,
Icarus.
go ahead.
Um, yeah, my other thought, we'll save Matt and I will tie in our freshman phenoms discussion at the end here. But Demolition Men, kind of the opposite of my first thought. Teams that just totally demolished their competition in the opener. We mentioned Auburn. We mentioned Gonzaga. We discussed those two somewhat at length. Houston was favored by 35 and still covered by 20. That's ridiculous. They are a freak of nature. They were at 50 in the first half against a top half SWAC team.
Amazing.
Just totally destroying teams. Their defense is as good as you could possibly imagine. And Javier Francis didn't even play. Like they weren't even completely full strength defensively, and they're still eviscerating teams. They're going to be a complete terror if you can't compete with them athletically, and even if you can, like Auburn on Saturday, we'll discuss, that could be dicey as well. Alabama, complete domination in the second half, especially offensively. Again, another team that sets up well as a bye game murderer because they play a ton of possessions. They have incredible depth. They got Youngblood and Nelson back off the bench playing on a minutes restriction, but still out there. Or sorry, not Youngblood, Right Cell. Youngblood's not back till January. But Kai, I mean, I didn't want to take anything away from that just because, like I said, this is what Nate Oates teams do. They did this last year in bye games and got their Ken Palm ranking real high. I think they're going to keep doing it. They're just set up to do that. But all four of those teams, like that might be your top four in the country: Auburn, Gonzaga, Alabama, Houston. Apologies to a couple others, but those teams are absurd. And then just tip of the cap to some teams that not top of the country, but covered by 20 plus. Michigan, Louisville, Northwestern, not bad at all. A debut there, Matthew, for Pat Kelsey. We are not totally surprised by them covering like that in a bye game, but they did.
Jim, best point you made was the fun Louisville, Kentucky undercurrent battle of like who can be a bigger, badder, meaner bully to lesser teams. And it's just a very obvious. I'm convinced Kelsey and Pope are texting behind the scenes like, you guys see what we did tonight? 60.
Yeah.
How about you? Nah, 65. Nice.
I believe Kentucky covered by 19.5 points and Louisville covered by 20.5. So Kelsey with
covered
a
by
small,
that margin,
covered, not won by. They both demolished. FAU, we mentioned a massive win. And then a couple Mountain West teams, Utah State, Kai, you alluded to them. The program is the same. They won by 50. And then Boise State just took a sledgehammer to poor Oakland, who is starting to figure things out after losing a ton of production last year. Boise looks like every bit a title contender out in the Mountain West alongside Nevada, San Diego State, who got by UC San Diego. More of the same from the Mountain West, maybe. I'm not going to say gaming the metrics, but those elevation teams win by a lot at home.
Boise is starting Andrew Meadow at the 2. So they're starting 4 guys over 6'7", basically 4 forwards, and then a point guard, Cardanius. And
Smash.
It might work.
Smash.
It might work. And they still have the NAIA Player of the Year in Buchanan off the bench. Yeah, they're good. Really good.
Yep. That is my thought. Shout out to those teams that look really good early. Kai, your last thought, third thought, second?
I do have 2, but they'll be quick. I didn't go super in depth in this one. I just want to do a quick Euro dude check-in because the Euro scene has been a hot topic, we'll say, this offseason with speculation that some of these guys will actually finally be good and impactful right away. So let's check in on them. Igor Demin from BYU. I watched some of this game. They played Central Arkansas, so slight caveat, but he passes the eye test for me with flying colors. He looked awesome, pretty much effortless, I would say. 6'9" ball handler. He had 18 points, 11 assists, 4 steals. I think he's the real deal. I think he could be a all-conference player in the Big 12. So he gets a green check mark from Old Kai.
He's huge, and he is an absurd passer. I think that's the part that didn't fully show up for me. The limited film I watched of how good of a passer he is, and he's obviously got the height to throw over the top, and just the instincts, the way he moves defenders with his eyes, and then a little no look the other way. He's really, really good, Kai. I was impressed.
For BYU, the fact that Moat Mag is like an afterthought in that rotation, I know he's like maybe not all the way 100% healthy, but like that was a key piece for a really good Rutgers team. He's off the bench like number 8 for this BYU team. Like this is a really good BYU team. I think people need to kind of turn the page to like, this is not Mark Pope, but Kevin Young's awesome, very modern, depth, great passing, inverted stuff. Not the same, but similar-ish. Like that's BYU, still BYU.
Yeah, I'll still wait and see on top 20. Central Arkansas's got a lot to figure out. They're a brand new team. But
Yeah,
the Illinois guys.
BYU had a 32% block rate. That's ridiculous.
Holy cow.
Yikes. That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Okay. The Illinois guys, Kasparis Yakuchionis and Tomislav Ivisic. Something like that. Those are their two big Euro guys. Now, again, they played EIU. I didn't get to watch, but it looks like KJ played pretty well. Again, his numbers look solid, whatever. And same story with Ivisic. I think they both had double doubles of some sort, or at least close to it. I will keep monitoring that, so I didn't get an actual eye test on that one. But yeah, let's put a pin in them. I'm gonna say past the first test, at least like pass fail categorizations.
Yes. Calm down, Illinois. Will Riley is not European. That's why he's not being mentioned here, but he will be in freshman phenoms.
Correct.
So don't worry.
Yes. Will Riley, I did watch him his preseason. Mixed, in my opinion. We'll talk. Finally, a small shout out, and I will credit Armand Jovic, the European specialist in the Discord. Gabriel Posado for Evansville.
Yeah, looks great.
This guy is legit. He will fully take in the Ben Hummerkaus role. Not saying he's quite as good as Hummerkaus, but Evansville has like a go-to player in him. 28 points. He's a freshman in a losing effort against North Texas team that's going to roll a lot of teams just the way they play. They're awesome. A name to watch for sure. An all-conference caliber player, I will say, in the Valley.
Yep. I'll also add Vokietitis, the starting center for FAU. He got in foul trouble, but when he was out there, he was a monster against Indiana State. So good early returns for the Euros that we were skeptical of here.
Indeed. Okay, passing it back. Matthew, do you have a third thought? Or do you have a combined one with Jim with the Phenoms?
Yeah, Jim, you lead this. I'll throw in my additional freshman guys. I listed like 20 dudes. I did like a Bard and Kempom quasi thing, and I wrote down 2 guys. I caught 2 minutes of eye test. So that's going to really be set in stone for sure.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, we've had a couple classes in a row here of freshmen not being super standouts and not making as big of an impact as maybe we thought. Like obviously Reed Shepherd was great, but the top ranked guys weren't awesome last year. That is not the case this year. You got to start with Montverde, just the unbelievable team that they had last year. Flagg was great in his debut. Derek Queen had 22 and 20 for Maryland.
Yeah.
Asa Newell for Georgia had 26, 11, and 3 blocks. Rob Wright was arguably the best guard on Baylor in that complete destruction against Gonzaga. I mean, that team was completely loaded last year, and all those guys have looked good to start off the year. Then you add in Demon, as Kai mentioned. Knipple for Duke is every bit living up to the hype that Tyrese Proctor couldn't live up to 2 years ago. Dylan Harper had a great debut for Rutgers without his Bash brother. Ace Bailey was sidelined with a day-to-day injury, but Harper's great. Matt mentioned Trey Johnson. He and Will Riley, just like the guys that I looked at as, they're kind of thin, but they're insane shot makers. And oh boy, did that translate in their debuts. Johnson, 29 and 5 on 10 of 20 from the field. Will Riley for Illinois, 31, 7 and 3 on 10 of 13 from the field. Hyper efficient. If you're a shot maker and you make the shots, you're really, really good. I still think both those guys are going to have some rough nights against more physical, aggressive, capable defenses that are going to bother them. But boy, did they look good to start. Matt, who else did you want to fill in here? The other one I'll mention, LeBaron Philon for Alabama, seems like he was underrated. He's immediately stepping into the rotation and being a key contributor there.
I think you watched this game. Harvard Marist, Robert Hinton.
Oh, Hinton.
I did not watch this game.
Like, I saw tape on him, and again, this is why you should join the Discord. Like, all these guys are like Armand and everyone who's way smarter than us in this, like, tips us off to like, oh, these guys are really good, and they send tape, and so like they're not complete foreign commodities when I see them. But Hinton looked kind of skinny on film, but man, he is so smooth. Like, Really like his game. He was dominant against Marist, like a pretty physical, tough team. Harvard's always got talent. Just is it healthy? Is it cohesive? He does feel like a maybe not Malik Mack type prospect, but a guy that I think if he decides to take his talents to a bigger program, wants to see some spotlight, you could see some. I think he could shoot up portal chart rankings.
I think he's better than Malik Mack. I'll say that.
Wow, you're there.
Yeah. Yes. He's awesome. He was such an easy home run pick for freshman of the year in that league to me.
Yeah.
When
he
I
looks
wrote
great.
Yep.
And then Jim, you mentioned, I mean, obviously Nick Canupa was incredible. I don't know. I mean, the Kofi kid I guess Kofi's not really a true freshman from Virginia. Like he was there last year, right? Jacob Kofi.
Oh yeah. Redshirted.
Redshirted. Okay. Yeah. He looked pretty good. Again, nothing from that game looked that good in general. But I had him written down. And then, Fears and Diallo. Fears for Oklahoma and Diallo for Washington, like two critical cogs, like have to play point guard or have to be contributors for the team to probably be good. Those are guys I'm watching. I thought they were impressive, but maybe not all the way consistent. Washington, like very unorthodox. Jim, you mentioned this. They were really just playing like Great Osabor at point guard. So Diallo's supposed to be kind of a point guard, but they weren't really using him as such. So that's weird. And then Oklahoma, they look like a kind of a fun offensive team, I might say. We'll see. It's one game against London Woods. So I don't want to react to it, but you could tell like maybe they're starting to make shots.
Yeah. Kofi did not redshirt, by the way, if Virginia fans.
He's true freshman. Okay.
Yelling. Just wanted to clarify that. But yeah, it looks like a really fun class, Kai. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. I heard that all the scouts think this is one of the best classes in like 10 years, which I didn't really process because no one wanted freshmen this year because everyone's older. But maybe there were some undervalued freshmen that came through in this crowd.
I'll even toss in Boogie Fland, who looked awesome too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Arkansas.
Agreed.
Also, Nelly Davis, guys, we're fine. He's the best player on that team. Don't worry.
Nice player.
Yeah, he's fine. Okay. I just have one more thought. I'll throw it in real quick. I just want to talk Santa Clara really, really fast. The Bronx are at large good. Carlos Stewart didn't even play well, and they took down SLU. This team is deep, talented, tons of experience, tons of continuity. I think they're like at large good. They finally made it to the totem pole. Key upcoming games for them. They really want to crack that third team from the WCC. Arizona State in Vegas needs to be a win. Neutral site game, I think it will be. They play at Nevada. That's going to be a key game for bracket nerds like us. They're home against Stanford. They have a neutral against TCU, and they're at McNeese. Will Wade gives them a huge chance by going to McNeese. That team is going to be at least a Q2 game for them by the time they start dominating the Southland. So I really think the Santa Clara team is awesome. Little bonus section. I think SLU is still good. They'll be fine. They don't have a lot of depth, but Schertz didn't have a lot of depth at Indiana State either. But they really need Robbie Avila to stay healthy or they are in big trouble. Those are my takeaways from that game.
Yeah, real shame that Avila is not going to play against Avila University. That's who SLU's got on Sunday, and Robbie's not going to be out there with that ankle. But yeah, I walked away from that thinking both these teams are really good, but SLU does need Avila, like the playmaking, the threat of his shooting, the threat of his fake the handoff and go like that. That's part of what makes their offense so tough to defend, and they might lose that, unfortunately. But Santa Clara, yeah, I said before the season I thought maybe they could be in the at-large picture, and I've seen nothing to deter me from that claim.
Alrighty, here we go, guys. Little weekend previews to finish us off. Let me get the timestamp perfect. We're starting off with the big one on Friday. It's UNC and it's Kansas. I will say a little bit high, says Kai, on the spread. The spread's already out. It came out, I think, Wednesday. 7.5 in favor of the KU Jayhawks, at least last time I looked. KenPom's got it 7 as well, so it's not outlandish from a quote-unquote analytics site perspective. But it does feel high, Matthew. We talked about North Carolina not looking great in Game 1. Kansas smoked Howard. What are your thoughts on this game?
I don't like that Hubert Davis has sort of just accepted the fact that his team's a little bit undersized. Like the post-game stuff, he was saying like, man, we just got to have better heart. Like, I don't care how big we are. Like, we just got to go box. And it was just
Good
like,
coach.
okay,
Good
but
coach there.
We all saw the problems with the roster construction in the offseason. And maybe it's one game. Let's not overreact to it. But very, very early litmus test for how how much of a problem the front line is going to be this season against KU. Now, I haven't been as plugged in with KU. I know there was some talk to him about that. Their chemistry is not exactly very cohesive right now. They have some issues as well. I know UNC's offense is awesome. Like, I'm totally sold on that side of the ball. That's never been a question with those guards. But the defense against Elon was like, wow. I mean, Elon looked pretty talented, I'll be honest, but I think UNC had a big part in that.
Yeah, it was 43-40 on the glass. Like, UNC is just an even rebounding team with Elon. That's scary to me. I know Elon's got a 7'4" guy that used to be at St. Mary's, but he averaged like 7 rebounds a game in Division II. He's not like a complete demolition destroyer inside. I think I've said those words like 100 times on this podcast. I'll try to bring a more varied lexicon to the next episode. But yeah, I'm very curious about this one because I'm a little bit lower than general consensus on both teams. I don't think Kansas is top 3. I don't think UNC is top 10. So that kind of lands me with 1 foot on each side here, Kai. I don't think I'm going to have any sort of a bet, but yeah, how does UNC compensate for the lack of size? They're going to have to double Dickinson. They're going to try to front to prevent him from getting any kind of touches. Does that open shots up for AJ Storr, for DeJuan Harris? Can he continue to knock those down? That's kind of my biggest what I'm examining with this one. Just like Gonzaga Baylor, I'm probably going to be on the sideline and just watching this for takeaways on both teams. But I'm excited for it. It's a great Friday night game with most of the real big ones coming on Saturday.
Yeah, you don't want to fade Kansas at Kansas necessarily, but I think the spread is a little high, and I do kind of think there's a little bit of, something going on, Matt. AJ Storr played 15 minutes against Howard. He's clearly not like in the good graces of Bill Self. David Coit is starting over him. Zeke Mayo had a great game, but Howard is the level that Zeke Mayo plays well against. Let's see what Zeke Mayo does against North Carolina. I'm very curious to see that play out. I would lean Carolina, but I don't know if I'm going to have a side as well, Jim, in this one.
I can't believe Coit is starting for them. Like, it was such a late whatever grab from the portal. And I know Shaq Moore didn't play and they decided not to start Storr or Mayo, but still that mildly alarming to me.
Saturday, we already have the game of the year. It's Auburn and Houston in Houston, but it's at the Rockets Arena. So you can call it a home game if you want for Houston. I'd probably call it a kind of home, semi-home. These two teams could easily be the best two teams in the country. Could be a title preview. Jim, what do you think is going to happen here? Houston's best defense in the country. Auburn right now is number 2 defense in the country after the Vermont evisceration.
Yeah, I think both these teams get the rep of, they just beat bad teams by 100 and they're not actually that good against top shelf competition. Well, so how does that work when, the pot's calling the kettle black out there in Houston? But man, I just think the rim dominance of both teams is going to make this somewhat ugly. Like, it's going to be really hard to get easy buckets inside. I'm expecting Francis to play for Houston, get back. I think he was close to playing last time out, and they just held him out because they knew they wouldn't need him. But there's going to be a lot of shots into armpits at the bucket, probably some challenge 3-pointers on both ends of the court because teams know they can extend with all that shot blocking behind them. Matt, it feels like a little bit rock fighty. The question is pace. I think Auburn wants to run a little bit more than Houston does. We'll see if they're able to speed them up to that extent. But I'm thinking an ugly game. I will ride with Houston winning this one. But again, I picked this game was my national title game in our pod just a week ago, and I had Auburn winning. So I'll say Houston gets them, and then come April, that's when Auburn gets their revenge in San Antonio.
Yeah, I cited concerns about Auburn's backcourt in our Discord, and I kind of think Houston, I've seen them play. There not many questions with either team, but the Los experiment at point guard is sort of where you have to, put the magnifying glass. I know Kai is super excited about him. I'm lukewarm on Los. He looked good in his first game against Jackson State.
But I think
Milos.
I know.
That's what they call him.
They call him Los?
Yeah, they call him Los. I think it's a thing.
Oh, Uzan?
Check me on that,
Uzan.
fans.
I don't know.
Yeah. The point guard battle will be critical here because it's like sort of if you have to find a weak spot on either team, it's probably that position. And so I think that's why, Jim, if you have some inconsistency at that spot going against 2 vaunted defenses, it could not look as pretty. I do think this is kind of an ugly-ish game. Advantage goes to the better front line. And pound for pound, is there a better front line in the country than these two? Like, I think this is
They
legitimately the
both
two best
might
front
be.
lines of
Yeah,
college
it
basketball.
might be.
So
That'd be top two.
slight edge to Houston, Kai, but
Yeah.
not substantially.
Ken Palm's got it -2 in favor of Houston. I would expect it not to move a whole lot, to be honest. I think I'm going with Houston in this game. Auburn eviscerated Vermont inside. They were nearly 70% from the floor inside too, and like all their big guys scored at will. Even Chaney Johnson was like 6 for 6 inside the paint. This is like we talked about snip snap whiplash. This is a whiplash to Houston, who is categorically more physical and athletic than Vermont. Not saying Auburn's not the same from Jackson State, but I think Auburn's going to have a lot tougher time scoring inside. I don't think they're going to shoot 46% from three all year. So I would lean towards Houston in this game, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
It's very funny. These teams won their opening games by a combined 108.
They could be the two best teams in the country. Really, they really could.
Yeah.
Okay, another fun game. Arkansas Baylor. Baylor got smoked to Gonzaga. They tanked quite a bit in Ken Palm's rankings. Arkansas, they played a really good Lipscomb team. Lipscomb hung around for a while, but Arkansas eventually extended, ended up covering. I think that's actually pretty impressive. Like Lipscomb is, to me, a borderline top 100 team. Very, very, very good. This game's a neutral site. I believe it's in Dallas. So I guess you could give a little edge to Baylor. I would not. Just being in the state of Texas, it's huge. Matthew, which way do you go in this game?
Torn. I mean, kind of a tough spot, right, for the Bears coming back from that battle. But I don't know. We'll see what the Clones have to offer. I think this is kind of two where you're looking at, does Iowa State come in and
Baylor. Arkansas Baylor.
Talking about Iowa State Baylor.
It's Arkansas Baylor.
Plays Baylor.
Iowa State's in their conference, buddy.
What are you talking about, Matt? Arkansas plays Baylor on Saturday.
I thought Iowa State's playing Baylor. Why did I write that down on my sheet?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, Arkansas. I mean, I think the thing that we were looking for is Nelly Davis looking healthy, and he did. I mean, obviously, it was kind of an ugly game against Lipscomb. Lipscomb came back in that game with a little bit dicey late, but still, I think the fact that Nelly looks healthy and Boogie looks pretty impressive makes me like Arkansas. And again, I'm not really sold on Baylor. You could argue it's a great spot to bounce back off the Gonzaga thing, but I think Baylor's issues are wider than just one game against Gonzaga.
I like Baylor a lot in this one. I'm just not overly high on Arkansas, and I am glad they got Adu back. And the fact that he was out there at least at all in the first game, but I watched most of it, and it was kind of like they needed to get in transition to score against a team that is not all that good defensively in the half court. And they got a bunch of steals and dunks and looked great doing that. I don't know if they're going to get that against Baylor. At least their guards are somewhat sure-handed, if not super stout defensively. So Baylor does need to keep Arkansas away from the rim, see if the guards can do a better job of that and do a better job in ball screen coverage, where Gonzaga got a ton of layups and stuff off rollers. But yeah, Kai, you mentioned it being in Dallas. I believe Arkansas plays a lot of once every 2 years in football. They play in Dallas. And Jerry World. I think Jerry Jones Arkansas grad. He might be.
Yes,
off the top of my head, I think so. So I think there's going to be plenty of Arkansas fans in the building. But I think we'll get a lot better effort from Baylor. That game really snowballed on them quick at Gonzaga. I think we see a much, much better effort. Shout out to Scott Drew for his scheduling, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is their first two games. They also play St. John's in the Bahamas. They play Connecticut at UConn on December 4th. Like, he's trying to give the people what they want in terms of high-level matchups.
I lean Baylor bounce back as well, but very cautious about it. That game did spook me a little bit. Okay, lastly, Tennessee-Louisville. Tennessee at Louisville. The Vols favored by 1 on KenPom. Interesting. Matt gets his first chance to... You're going Louisville, huh? You're going all your eggs in the basket for Louisville Cardinals.
I do feel like I want to go ante up full Monty here, but the physicality disparity here is that's a question mark. It's like Louisville's main, I don't know, potential weakness that hasn't been tested in anyone they've played so far and all the summer stuff and exhibitions and obviously the dominant opening game against Moorhead. Well, I think this is like an ultimate test here is can there basically avoidance of a true 5 of like legitimate strength at the 4 and the 5, can they combat that against a very physical, a very, like we said, this is a throwback Rick Barnes team. Dalton Connect is not walking through that door. And while we like Chaz Lanier, I think this is going to be we feel a clash of two styles. It really will. If last year probably would have been more of a fun track me with some shot making, some scoring. But I think this year with the new with the way I think Tennessee is evolving with some limitations they have on offense. I think this is going to be a fun contrast or clash of styles here.
Yeah, I actually have come around in this. I think Louisville wins. The defense from Tennessee in the first game was not as good as I thought it would be. 56% inside the arc for Gardner-Webb. Like they kind of got somewhat what they wanted, despite that Ziegler, Meshack, Okpara trio for Tennessee. I think the guys that are not that threesome are bad defenders. Milicic, Gainey, Lanier. Like those guys are not neutral. They are bad. So the other three have to compensate for them. And the offense isn't really as good. I've got a little bit of a concern going for Tennessee right now. I know they won by 16. It wasn't some panic, and they were up even bigger than that. Gardner-Webb kind of came back to cut it to that. But there's enough warning signs that I'm a little worried. And I think Louisville actually has a little bit more of an identity right now. That trip to the Bahamas, I think, helped get them sorted out. And Kai, that place is going to be hopping. Just like, oh my God, we have a team that matters playing a game that we could actually win. Yes, I'm excited to see the Yum Center back alive.
You actually kind of took my point. I think they subbed, okay to good defenders with bad ones. I think Lanier's a horrible defender. I think Milicic is too. And Gainey as well off the bench. Yeah, I think that gives them a little bit of holes. And Louisville firing on all cylinders, you can't really. I think Louisville's offense is awesome this season. I have no doubt about that. They're so deep. They have the Pat Kelsey style. I think that could be enough to pull away. It's going to be an awesome environment, like you said, Jim. So I lean towards Louisville in this one as well. Just thinking about it towards Saturday. Okay, fellas. That's our podcast. It's our first in-season podcast of the 2024-25 season. No reviews to go through today. If you want to leave a review, please do. iTunes, that's the place to do it. We'll read it at the end of the show. Ask a question if you want. All good. Till then, enjoy the weekend of basketball ahead. We'll be back next week with another podcast. Hey, Saturday, best bet show. What do you think, guys?
Hey, why not?
Why not?
Give the people what they want. There's a lot of demand for it, Kai. I will say that.
On Saturday, we will let you know what time. We will do our best bets show, talk about the slate on Saturday, and we'll be back with another podcast on next week on Thursday. This channel is where you're going to find us. Till then, be good. Goodbye.